Maya Thompson stared at her reflection in the cracked mirror of her small apartment bathroom. The bills were piling up on her kitchen counter, and the eviction notice taped to her door left her with few options. 10 years of working as a social worker had been rewarding, but the salary barely covered her basics, let alone her mother's mounting medical bills. Her mother, Grace, had been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and the experimental treatment that could save her life wasn't covered by insurance. The cost? $100,000. Maya had tried everything, loans, extra shifts, even selling her car. Nothing came close to the amount she needed. The local newspaper sat open on her bed, showing the business section. There was Marcus, Chen's face, smiling back at her from the cover story about his latest business success. The same Marcus she had grown up with in their small Georgia town, the boy who used to share his lunch with her when her family couldn't afford the school meals. Now he was a self-made millionaire, while she could barely keep the lights on. Maya remembered the last time she saw Marcus at their high school graduation. They had been best friends since elementary school, always looking out for each other. But life had pulled them in different directions. He went off to Harvard on a scholarship, and she stayed behind to care for her sick father until he passed away. The invitation she received yesterday seemed like a sign from above. A charity gala hosted by Chen Enterprises, where Marcus would be announcing a major philanthropic initiative. Tickets were expensive, but Maya had managed to get herself hired as part of the waiting staff for the evening. "Just get through tonight," Maya whispered to herself, adjusting her borrowed black dress. Her friend Keisha from the catering company had helped her secure the position and lent her the dress. The plan was simple: find a way to talk to Marcus, explain her mother's situation, and hope that their childhood friendship still meant something. The Roosevelt Hotel gleamed with old-world elegance as Maya walked through the service entrance. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, and the marble floors reflected the warm lighting. It was a world away from her everyday life. "Remember, stick to the plan," Keisha whispered as they prepared to serve champagne. Marcus Chen always makes a point of talking to the staff, says it reminds him of where he came from. Maya's hands trembled slightly as she carried her tray of glasses through the crowd. The room was filled with New York's elite, investment bankers, real estate moguls, and tech entrepreneurs. They barely glanced at her as she moved between them, just another invisible server in their world of wealth and privilege. Then she saw him. Marcus stood near the stage, surrounded by admirers. He had grown taller since high school, and his formerly lanky frame had filled out. But his smile, that warm, genuine smile that had made her feel safe during the hardest days of her childhood. I was exactly the same. Their eyes met across the room. Maya saw the flash of recognition cross his face, followed by surprise and something else she couldn't quite read. He excused himself from his group and started walking toward her. Maya's heart pounded. She hadn't expected him to recognize her so quickly. What would she say? How could she explain what her life had become? The weight of her desperation pressed down on her chest, making it hard to breathe. Maya Thompson. Marcus's voice was softer than she expected, filled with warmth and disbelief. "I can't believe it's really you." Before she could respond, another server bumped into her. The champagne glasses on her tray crashed to the floor, drawing everyone's attention. Maya felt her face burn with embarrassment as she knelt to clean up the mess. "Let me help," Marcus said, kneeling beside her despite his expensive suit. Just like when they were kids, and he would help her clean up after art class. Still looking. "Out for me after all these years?" Maya managed to say, trying to keep her voice steady. "Always," he replied, and for a moment they were just Maya and Marcus again, two kids from the wrong side of the tracks who had each other's backs. But reality crashed back as the event coordinator rushed over, apologizing profusely to Marcus and shooting Maya a stern look. She knew she would probably lose this job, adding one more problem to her mountain of troubles. "We need to talk," Marcus said quietly, slipping her his business card. "Come to my office tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. Maya clutched the card like a lifeline as she was ushered away to the kitchen. The embossed letters seemed to glow under the fluorescent lights. Marcus Chen, CEO, Chen Enterprises. Tomorrow morning, she would have to swallow her pride and ask for help from the boy who had once shared his lunch with her. But for her mother's sake, she would do anything. Maya barely slept that night. She tossed and turned in her small bed, memories of her childhood with Marcus mixing with worries about her mother's condition. Around 3 in the morning, she got up to check on Grace, who was sleeping fitfully in the next room. "Baby, is that you?" Grace called out weakly. "Yes, Mama. Do you need anything?" Maya sat on the edge of the bed, taking her mother's frail hand. "You should be sleeping. You've got that important meeting tomorrow." Even sick, Grace was still trying to take care of her daughter. Maya hadn't told her mother about running into Marcus at the gala or about losing the catering job. She definitely hadn't mentioned her desperate plan to ask him for help. Grace Thompson had always been proud, raising Maya alone after her father died, never accepting handouts from anyone. "I'll be fine, Mama. You just focus on getting better." The next morning, Maya stood outside the gleaming Chen Enterprises building in downtown Manhattan. She had put on her best outfit, a navy blue dress she kept for job interviews, though it was a bit worn at the seams. The security guard gave her a suspicious look as she presented Marcus's business card, but eventually let her through. The elevator ride to the 50th floor gave her time to think about what she would say. How do you ask someone you haven't seen in 15 years for $100,000? The doors opened to a reception area bigger than her entire apartment. "Ms. Thompson?" A polished receptionist greeted her. "Mr. Chen is expecting you. Please follow me." Marcus's office had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He was standing at the window when she entered, but turned to face her with that same warm smile from last night. "Maya," he said, walking over to give her a hug. "I still can't believe you're here. Where have you been all these years?" The familiar way he embraced her, as if no time had passed, made Maya's eyes fill with tears. She tried to blink them away, but Marcus noticed. "Hey, what's wrong? Talk to me." And so she did. Maya told him everything. About staying in Georgia to care for her father. About becoming a social worker to help other families in need. About her mother's cancer diagnosis. The words poured out of her like a dam breaking. "The treatment costs $100,000, she finished, her voice barely a whisper. "I've tried everything, Marcus. I wouldn't be here if I had any other choice." Marcus listened without interrupting, his expression growing more concerned. When she finished, he walked to his desk and pressed a button on his phone. "Janet, cancel my meetings for the rest of the morning." He turned back to Maya. "Let's go see your mother." The ride to Maya's apartment was quiet. Marcus's driver navigated through the busy streets, while Maya tried to process what was happening. She hadn't expected Marcus to drop everything and come with her. When they arrived at her building, Maya felt embarrassed by the broken elevator and the graffiti in the hallway, but Marcus didn't seem to notice. He was focused on the family photos hanging in Maya's small living room, pictures of her and her mother at her college graduation, at Christmas, at the park. Grace was awake, sitting up in bed with a book. Her eyes widened when she saw who was with Maya. "Little Marcus Chen, is that really you?" Marcus's face lit up. "Mrs. Thompson, you look as beautiful as ever." "Don't you lie to an old woman," Grace laughed, then started coughing. Maya rushed to get her mother some water while Marcus pulled up a chair beside the bed. When she returned, she found them talking about the old days, about how Marcus used to come over for Grace's famous sweet potato pie. "Maya tells me you're not feeling well," Marcus said gently. Grace's expression hardened. "Maya shouldn't have bothered you with our problems. We're doing just fine." "Mama, please," Maya started, but Marcus held up his hand. "Mrs. Thompson, do you remember what you told me the day my father left us?" Marcus asked. "You said that real family takes care of each other, even when it's hard, even when they're too proud to ask for help." Grace's eyes filled with tears. "That was a long time ago, Marcus. But it's still true. You and Maya were there for me during the hardest time of my life. Let me be there for you now." Maya watched as her mother's resistance crumbled. Grace reached out and took Marcus's hand, squeezing it weakly. "Thank you," she whispered. Back in the living room, Marcus made some calls while Maya prepared coffee. She could hear him arranging for Grace to be transferred to the best cancer treatment center in the city, making sure everything would be taken care of. When he hung up, Maya tried to thank him, but he stopped her. "Don't thank me yet," he said, his expression serious. "There's something we need to discuss." Maya's heart sank. She knew there would be conditions. There always were when it came to money. "I'll pay for everything," Marcus continued, "but I need something from you in return." "Anything," Maya said quickly, then caught herself. "I mean, what do you need?" Marcus took a deep breath. "I need you to marry me." Maya stared at Marcus, sure she had misheard him. The coffee cup in her hand trembled slightly and she set it down before she could drop it. "Marry you?" she repeated. "Marcus, that's crazy. We haven't seen each other in 15 years. Marcus ran his hand through his hair, a gesture she remembered from their school days when he was trying to explain something complicated. "Look, I know how it sounds, but hear me out. My grandmother left me controlling interest in Chen Enterprises, with one condition. I had to be married by my 35th birthday or everything goes to my cousin Richard." "And when's your birthday?" Maya asked, already dreading the answer. 3 months from now." Marcus stood up and started pacing. "Richard's been trying to sell the company piece by piece. He doesn't care about the thousands of people who work. For us, I've been looking for a way around the marriage clause, but my grandmother's lawyers were thorough." Maya sat down heavily on her worn couch. "So you want to marry me to keep your company?" "I want to marry someone I trust," Marcus corrected. "Her. Someone who knew me before all this." He gestured around him, meaning the wealth and success. "Someone who shared her lunch with me when my dad left and we had no food in the house." Maya felt tears forming in her eyes again. She remembered that day clearly, finding 11-year-old Marcus hiding in the school library during lunch, too ashamed to tell anyone he was hungry. She had split her sandwich with him every day for months after that. "It would just be for a year," Marcus continued. "Long enough to secure the company. Your mother would get the best treatment available. I'd set up a trust fund for her future care. And after the divorce, I'd make sure you're both taken care of for life." "A business arrangement," Maya said flatly. Marcus knelt in front of her, taking her hands in his. "Maya, you're the only person I can trust with this. Richard's been parading women in front of me for months. Models, socialites, all of them after the money. But you're real. You always have been." Before Maya could respond, they heard a crash from the bedroom. They rushed in to find Grace on the floor trying to reach her water glass. "Mama!" Maya helped her mother back into bed while Marcus called his driver to bring the car around. "We need to get her to the hospital," he said, already dialing another number. "I'll have my team start the paperwork for her transfer to Memorial Sloan Kettering." At the hospital, Maya watched as Marcus took charge. One phone call from him had Grace moved to a private room. Specialists appeared within hours, running tests and discussing treatment options. Maya had never seen such immediate, attentive care. Late that night, after Grace had finally fallen asleep, Maya found Marcus in the hospital corridor, his suit, jacket draped over a chair, sleeves rolled up as he worked on his laptop. "You didn't have to stay," she said softly. "Yes, I did." He looked up at her, and for a moment, she saw the boy who used to walk her home from school every day. "Have you thought about what I said?" Maya leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. "It's not that simple, Marcus. What about love? Don't you want to marry someone you actually have feelings for?" "I care about you." "Maya, I always have." He stood up and walked over to her. "Maybe it's not romantic love, but it's real, and who knows, maybe—" He left the sentence unfinished, but Maya felt her heart skip a beat. She thought about her mother sleeping in the other room, finally getting the care she desperately needed. She thought about all the nights she'd spent crying over bills, feeling helpless as her mother got sicker. "If I say yes," she began slowly, "I have conditions of my own." Marcus's face lit up. "Anything. I keep my job. No matter what society people say about your wife being a social worker." Maya straightened up, finding her strength. "And I want to start a foundation to help families who can't afford medical care, like we couldn't." "Done and done," Marcus smiled. "What else?" "We have to tell my mother the truth. I won't lie to her about this." Marcus's smile faded slightly. "Maya, if word gets out this is an arranged marriage, Richard's lawyers will be all over it. The prenup has a morality clause." "Then we'll tell her a version of the truth," Maya insisted. That we reconnected, that we're trying to see if our old friendship can be something more. That's not entirely a lie, is it? Marcus looked at her for a long moment, and Maya felt something shift in the air between them. No, he said softly. It's not a lie at all. A nurse walked by, breaking the moment. Maya took a deep breath, thinking about everything that had happened. In the last 24 hours, her world had turned upside down, but maybe, just maybe, it was turning right side up. Okay, she said finally, I'll marry you. Marcus pulled her into a tight hug, and Maya found herself holding on just as tightly. Neither of them saw Grace watching from her hospital room door, a knowing smile on her tired face. Sometimes life brings you right back where you're supposed to be, Grace whispered to herself, thinking of her own love story from long ago. Sometimes you just take the long way home. News of Marcus Chen's engagement spread through New York's social circles. Like wildfire, the tabloids scrambled to uncover information about Maya Thompson, the mysterious woman who had captured one of the city's most eligible bachelors. The story they found, childhood friends reuniting after years apart, seemed almost too perfect. Richard, Chen slammed the newspaper down on his desk, his face red with anger. A social worker? He's marrying a social worker? He turned to his assistant. Find out everything about this woman. There has to be something we can use. Meanwhile, Maya was experiencing culture shock as she moved into Marcus's penthouse apartment. Her few belongings looked out of place among the designer furniture and expensive art. You don't have to move in right away, Marcus said, watching her unpack a box of framed photos. The guest room is yours whenever you're ready. Maya placed a picture of her parents on the mantel. The press would find it strange if we lived apart during our engagement. Besides, I need to be closer to the hospital for Mama's treatments. Grace was responding well to the new medications, but the doctors wanted to keep her under observation. Maya spent every free moment at the hospital, often finding Marcus already there, working on his laptop while keeping her mother company. That boy always did have a good heart, Grace told Maya one afternoon. But there's something you're not telling me about all this. Maya looked at her mother's knowing eyes and felt guilt twist in her stomach. Mama, I'm not asking you to. Tell me? Grace interrupted. Sometimes love takes strange paths. Just make sure you're being honest with yourself, baby. Before Maya could respond, Marcus's secretary Patricia arrived with wedding planning materials. The ceremony was scheduled for 2 months away, giving them barely enough time to arrange everything. The Chen family wedding planner has handled all the details, Patricia explained, spreading photos of venues across Grace's hospital bed. The Roosevelt Hotel's ballroom is available, and the press will love the symbolism since that's where you reconnected. Maya watched as Patricia efficiently outlined plans for a 500-guest wedding that would cost more than she'd earned in her entire life. It felt surreal, like she was watching someone else's life unfold. Actually, Marcus spoke up, I was thinking about other botanical gardens. Maya used to talk about how her father proposed to her mother there. Maya's head snapped up. She couldn't believe he remembered that detail from their childhood conversations. Grace reached out and squeezed Marcus's hand. Robert would have loved that. Later that evening, Maya found Marcus on the penthouse balcony, looking out over the city lights. She handed him a cup of coffee, black with 2 sugars, just like he used to drink it in high school. Thank you for remembering about the botanical gardens, she said softly. But you don't have to do that. I know this isn't a real wedding. Marcus turned to face her. Just because it started as an arrangement doesn't mean it can't have meaning, Maya. I want your mother to see you have a beautiful wedding, even if... He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. Even if it's not going to last? Maya finished for him. The words hurt more than she expected them to. Before Marcus could respond, his phone rang. It was Richard, demanding an immediate meeting at the office. Marcus looked apologetically at Maya. Go, she said. I need to check on Mama anyway. At the hospital, Maya found her mother watching the evening news, which was running a segment about her engagement to Marcus. The reporter was interviewing people from their old neighborhood in Georgia. He was such a quiet boy, their old neighbor Mrs. Johnson was saying, always following Maya around like a lost puppy. We all knew they'd end up together someday. Grace muted the TV. Makes you think, doesn't it, about paths not taken? Mama, please don't. I see the way he looks at you when you're not watching, Grace continued. That's not acting, baby. And the way you smile when he walks into the room, that's not either. Maya busied herself adjusting her mother's pillows. It's complicated. Love always is, but that doesn't make it any less real. Across town, Marcus sat in his office, facing down his angry cousin. Richard paced back and forth, waving a folder of documents. A marriage of convenience, isn't it? Richard sneered. Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? Your precious social worker was working as a waitress the night you supposedly reunited. How romantic. Marcus kept his voice steady. Be careful, Richard. Or what? Face it, Marcus. Once the board finds out this engagement is a sham, they'll have no choice but to remove you. Grandma's morality clause is very specific. You don't know what you're talking about. Richard leaned across the desk. I have proof. The catering company confirmed she was hired just for that night. Her building superintendent says she was facing eviction. And then suddenly, she's engaged to you. The timing is a little convenient, don't you think? Marcus stood up slowly. Get out of my office. You have 1 week to step down voluntarily, Richard said, walking to the door, or I take this to the board and the press. I wonder how your fake fiancé will handle that kind of scandal. After Richard left, Marcus poured himself a drink with shaking hands. He had to protect Maya from this mess, but how? The truth was, somewhere between their childhood friendship and this complicated present, his feelings for her had become very real and very dangerous. Maya noticed something was wrong the moment Marcus came home. He barely touched his dinner and kept checking his phone. His forehead creased with worry lines she remembered from their school days, when he was struggling with a difficult math problem. Marcus, what's going on? She finally asked, setting down her fork. He looked up, trying to force a smile. Nothing, just business stuff. But Maya knew better. 15 years apart hadn't changed her ability to read him. She got up and moved to sit beside him on the couch. Remember when we were kids, and you'd say, just stuff, whenever your dad was drinking again? She took his hand. I didn't believe. You then either. Marcus squeezed her hand, and for a moment they were just two scared kids again, facing the world together. Richard knows, he said finally, about our arrangement. He's threatening to expose everything. Maya felt her stomach drop. What does that mean for the company? For my mother's treatment? I won't let anything happen to your mother, Marcus said firmly. I promise. But Richard's right about one thing. If this gets out, I'll lose the company. Thousands of people will lose their jobs. Everything my grandmother built will be destroyed. Maya stood up and walked to the window. The city lights blurred as tears filled her eyes. Maybe we should call it off. Find another way. Maya, I mean it. I can't be responsible for you losing everything. We'll figure something out for Mama's treatment. Marcus came up behind her, placing his hands on her shoulders. The gentle touch sent warmth spreading through her body. Do you remember junior year, he said softly, when Tommy Parker was bullying me about my clothes from the thrift store? You marched right up to him in the cafeteria and dumped your milk on his head. Maya couldn't help but laugh at the memory. He never bothered you again. Because you stood up for me. You've always fought for me, Maya. Let me fight for you now. She turned to face him, suddenly very aware of how close they were standing. What are you saying? I'm saying... Marcus took a deep breath. I'm saying maybe Richard's wrong. Maybe. This isn't just an arrangement anymore. Before Maya could respond, Marcus's phone rang. It was the hospital. Grace had taken a turn for the worse. They rushed to the hospital, all thoughts of Richard and his threats forgotten. Grace was pale and struggling to breathe, machines beeping all around her. The cancer is spreading faster than we anticipated, the doctor explained. We need to start a more aggressive treatment immediately. Maya felt her knees go weak. Marcus caught her, holding her up as the doctor continued explaining the new treatment plan. The cost would be astronomical, even by previous standards. Do whatever it takes, Marcus told the doctor. Money is no object. Later, sitting by Grace's bedside while she slept, Maya felt the weight of everything crushing down on her. Marcus had stepped out to make some calls and she was alone with her thoughts. "I don't know what to do, Mama," she whispered, holding her mother's frail hand. "I'm starting to feel things I shouldn't, things that will only make everything more complicated." "Then maybe they're exactly the things you should be feeling." Maya jumped. She hadn't realized her mother was awake. Grace's eyes were tired, but clear. "You think I don't see it? The way you two look at each other, that's not pretend, baby. But the arrangement—" "Life is too short for arrangements," Grace interrupted. "I learned that with your father. We had so little time together, but every moment was real. That's what matters." Maya thought about Marcus, about the way he remembered little details from their childhood, about how natural it felt to have him in her life again. "I'm scared, Mama." "Love is scary," Grace said, squeezing her hand weakly. "But it's worth it." The door opened, and Marcus came back in. He had loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, looking more like the boy she used to know than the powerful CEO he'd become. "I brought coffee," he said, handing Maya a cup, cream and 3 sugars, just how she liked it. Grace watched the simple interaction with knowing eyes. "Marcus, come sit with me a minute." "Maya, go get some air, baby. You've been here too long." Maya hesitated, but her mother shooed her out. In the hallway, she could hear their muffled voices through the door. When she came back 15 minutes later, Marcus's eyes were red and Grace was smiling despite her obvious pain. "What did you say to him?" Maya asked after Marcus left to take another call. "I just reminded him of something he already knew," Grace said mysteriously. "Sometimes people need a little push to see what's right in front of them." That night, Maya couldn't sleep. She stood on the penthouse balcony, watching the city below. So much had changed in just a few weeks. Her mother was sicker, the threat of scandal hung over their heads, and her heart was betraying her in ways she never expected. Behind her, she heard Marcus come out onto the balcony. Without a word, he wrapped his suit jacket around her shoulders, protecting her from the cool night air. "Your mother told me something tonight," he said quietly. "She said we were both being foolish, trying to pretend this is just business." Maya's heart started beating faster. "Marcus, she's right. I've been lying to myself, Maya. And maybe to you, too." He turned her to face him. "I didn't just choose you for this arrangement because I trusted you. I chose you because even after 15 years, you're still the only one who feels like home." Maya stepped back from Marcus, her heart pounding. His words hung in the night air between them. "You're still the only one who feels like home." She wanted so badly to believe him, to let herself fall into this moment, but reality kept her feet firmly planted. "We can't do this," she whispered. "There's too much at stake." "Maya, please." "No, Marcus, think about it. If we let ourselves feel something real and it doesn't work out, we lose everything. The company, Mama's treatment, everything." Before Marcus could respond, his phone buzzed. It was a text from Richard. "Time's running out, cousin. Decision time." Maya saw the message over his shoulder and felt her stomach twist. "See, this is exactly what I mean. We need to keep our heads clear." She handed back his jacket and went inside, leaving Marcus alone on the balcony. Neither of them slept much. That night, their thoughts too full of what-ifs and maybes. The next morning, Maya went to the hospital early. She found her mother sitting up in bed, looking stronger than she had in days. "The new treatment seems to be working," Grace said, patting the bed beside her. "Now tell me what's wrong." "Nothing's wrong, Mama." "Maya Elizabeth Thompson, don't you lie to your mother." Grace fixed her with that look that had always seen right through her. "You've got the same face you had when you were 7, and broke my favorite vase but didn't want to tell me." Maya sat down heavily on the bed. "Marcus told me I feel like home to him, and that's a problem because this was supposed to be just an arrangement, because his cousin is threatening to expose us. Because if we let real feelings get involved and something goes wrong—" "Baby," Grace interrupted, "something's already gone wrong. You're both fighting what's right in front of you because you're scared." Before Maya could respond, they heard a commotion in the hallway. Richard Chen was arguing with the nurses, demanding to see Grace. "Let him in," Grace called out, squeezing Maya's hand. "It's time we cleared the air." Richard stormed into the room, his expensive suit wrinkled and his face red with anger. He stopped short when he saw Grace sitting up in bed. looking at him with the same stern expression she used to give misbehaving kids in the neighborhood. "Mrs. Thompson," he said, trying to regain his composure. "I'm sorry to disturb you, but I need to speak with Maya about this ridiculous engagement." "Ridiculous?" Grace's voice was sharp. "What's ridiculous about two people who have loved each other since they were children finally finding their way back to each other?" Richard pulled out his phone. "I have proof this is all a sham. The timing of their reunion, Maya's financial troubles, everything." "You have proof of God's timing?" Grace asked calmly. "Because that's what this is. God bringing these two back together when they needed each other most." "Mrs. Thompson, with all due respect—" "No," Grace cut him off. "You listen to me, Richard Chen. I watched these two grow up. I saw the way Marcus would walk 2 miles out of his way just to carry Maya's books home. I saw how Maya would save half her lunch every day when she found out Marcus's daddy had left them with nothing." Maya felt tears rolling down her cheeks. As her mother continued, "Love isn't about timing or money or proof. It's about two hearts recognizing each other, even after years apart. Now you can take your proof and your threats and leave my hospital room." Richard stood there, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Finally, he turned and stormed out. "Mama," Maya whispered. "How did you know what to say?" Grace smiled tiredly. "Because I've been watching you two dance around your feelings, like scared teenagers. Sometimes love needs a little help from someone who can see it clearly." Later that afternoon, Marcus rushed into the hospital room. "Richard just called me. He's dropping everything. Said something about your mother being a force of nature." Grace winked at Maya. "I just told him the truth. Now if you two will excuse me, I'm feeling tired. Marcus, why don't you take Maya to get some real food? Hospital cafeteria coffee isn't enough to live on." Inni. The elevator down to the parking garage, Maya and Marcus stood in awkward silence. Finally, Marcus spoke. "Your mother is amazing. She always has been." Maya looked up at him. "Did you really walk 2 miles out of your way to carry my books?" Marcus blushed slightly. 2.5, actually. There was that construction on Hoke Street, remember?" Maya felt something warm bloom in her chest. "Why didn't you ever say anything back then?" "Because you were my best friend. I was afraid of ruining everything." He turned to face her. "I'm still afraid of that." The elevator. Doors opened, but neither of them moved. "Marcus," Maya said softly, "what if we're ruining everything by not saying anything?" He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his hand lingering on her cheek. "Then maybe it's time we stopped being afraid." A nurse pushing a cart interrupted their moment, and they had to step out of the elevator. But something had shifted between them, something that felt both terrifying and absolutely right. As they walked to his car, Marcus's phone buzzed again. This time it was his assistant. "Sir, the press is asking for a comment. Someone leaked details about the wedding plans." Maya felt panic rising in her chest. "Richard?" Marcus shook his head, reading the rest of the message. "No. Apparently our old neighbor Mrs. Johnson gave an interview about our beautiful love story. She told them about how we used to sit on her porch drinking lemonade and planning our future together." "We never did that." "Actually," Marcus looked sheepish. "Remember that summer when you were helping her with her garden? I might have talked to her about how I felt about you." Maya stared at him. "That was 15 years ago. Some feelings don't change," he said quietly. "They just wait for the right time." The botanical gardens were beautiful in the early morning light. Maya walked through the rows of flowers, remembering how her father used to bring her here on weekends. The wedding planning team buzzed around her, discussing arrangements and seating charts, but her mind was elsewhere. Last night's conversation with Marcus in the parking garage had changed everything. Or maybe it had just made them both finally admit what was already changing. "Maya?" Patricia, Marcus's secretary, touched her arm gently. "We need your opinion on the flower arrangements." The florist held up 2 bouquets, one full of elaborate, exotic flowers, the other a simple arrangement of white roses and baby's breath. "The roses," Maya said without hesitation. "They remind me of my mother's garden." Patricia made a note on her tablet. "Perfect. Now, about the guest list. Mr. Chen's board members are all confirmed, but we need to discuss the seating arrangements. With Richard Chen's recent behavior, we need to be strategic." Maya was saved from responding by her phone ringing. It was the hospital. "Your mother's latest test results are very promising," the doctor told her. "The new treatment is working. Better than we expected. She might even be able to attend the wedding without needing a wheelchair." Tears of joy rolled down Maya's cheeks as she thanked the doctor. She couldn't wait to tell Marcus, but when she arrived at his office, she found the place in chaos. Reporters crowded the lobby, and security guards were trying to maintain order. "What's going on?" she asked Marcus's assistant. "Someone leaked documents to the press," the young woman whispered. "Financial records showing large payments to your mother's hospital, dated just before your engagement was announced." Maya felt her blood run cold. She pushed through the crowd to Marcus's office, finding him in an intense discussion with his lawyers. "The timing looks suspicious," one lawyer was saying. "We need to get ahead of this story." "There is no story," Marcus snapped. "I'm helping pay for medical treatment for my future mother-in-law. There's nothing suspicious about that." He looked up and saw Maya in the doorway. The lawyers quickly excused themselves, leaving them alone. "I'm so sorry," Marcus said, running his hands through his hair. "Richard must have accessed the company's financial records before I revoked his privileges." "Don't apologize," Maya said firmly. "You have nothing to be sorry for. Neither of us does." Marcus walked over and took her hands in his. "I got some good news this morning that might help. The board reviewed Richard's proposal to take over the company. They rejected it unanimously, said they trust my leadership." "That's wonderful." Maya hugged him impulsively, then stepped back, blushing. "Oh, I almost forgot. The doctor called. Mama's getting better. She'll be able to come to the wedding." Marcus's face lit up. "Really? Maya, that's amazing." He pulled her into another hug, and this time, neither of them pulled away quickly. "We should celebrate," he said softly, still holding her. "Let me take you to dinner tonight. No business talk, no wedding planning. Just us." Maya looked up at him, seeing the hope in his eyes. "Like a real date?" "Exactly like a real date." He smiled. "I think we've earned one, don't you?" That evening, Maya stood in front of her closet, feeling nervous in a way she hadn't expected. This wasn't part of their arrangement. This was something else entirely. She finally chose a simple blue dress that her mother had helped her pick out years ago for job interviews. As she was fixing her hair, her phone buzzed with a text from Grace. "Have fun tonight, baby, and remember, sometimes the best things in life start with a leap of faith." Marcus took her to a small Italian restaurant in the village, far from the fancy places where they might be recognized. "I remember you telling me once that your dream date would be somewhere quiet, where you could actually talk and get to know someone," he explained, as they were seated in a cozy corner booth. Maya's heart fluttered. "You remember that?" "I remember everything about you, Maya." He reached across the table and took her hand. "Including how you used to say that honesty was the most important thing in any relationship." She squeezed his hand. "It still is." "Then I need to be honest with you now." Marcus took a deep breath. "This whole arrangement, I think I agreed to it because deep down I've never stopped thinking about you, about what might have been if I hadn't left for college, if we hadn't lost touch." Maya felt tears forming in her eyes. "Marcus, let me finish, please. When I saw you at that gala, it was like everything clicked into place, like all these years of success and achievement finally meant something because I could use them to help you. But now I'm terrified." "Of what?" "Of losing you again. Of messing this up. Of not being worthy of this second chance." Maya got up and moved to sit beside him in the booth. "Do you remember what you said to me the day you left for Harvard? You said that no matter where life took us, we'd always have each other's backs." "I meant it then," Marcus said softly. "And I believe you mean it now." Maya touched his cheek gently. "So maybe we stop thinking about arrangements and second chances and just be us, the way we always were." Marcus leaned into her touch. "Us against the world?" Just like old times. When he kissed her, it felt nothing like an arrangement and everything like coming home. Later that night, they walked through the city streets hand in hand, neither wanting the evening to end. They passed a street musician playing an old love song, and Marcus pulled Maya into a slow dance right there on the sidewalk. "People are staring," She laughed. "Let them," he said, spinning her gently. "I've waited 15 years to dance with you. I'm not wasting another minute worrying about what anyone else thinks." A passing photographer recognized them and started taking pictures. But for once, Maya didn't care about the headlines or the rumors or Richard's threats. All that mattered was this moment, this feeling, and the way Marcus looked at her like she was the answer to every question he'd ever had. The headline splashed across the morning papers made Maya's heart stop. Chen Enterprises heir's fiancé, a gold digger's past revealed. She stared at the grainy photos accompanying the article, pictures of her from years ago, working multiple jobs to make ends meet. There were even screenshots of old social media posts where she'd complained about rich people and corporate greed. "Don't read. That trash," Marcus said, taking the paper from her hands. They were having breakfast in the penthouse kitchen, something that had become their morning routine. But what if the board sees it? What if they believe it? Marcus pulled her into his arms. "The board knows who you are. They've met you at company events. They've seen how you treat everyone, from the CEO to the cleaning staff, with the same respect." Maya buried her face in his chest, breathing in the familiar scent of his cologne. "I just don't want to cause trouble for you." "You're not causing trouble, Richard is." Marcus kissed the top of her head. "And speaking of my dear cousin, he's in for a surprise at today's board meeting." Before Maya could ask what he meant, her phone rang. It was the hospital. "We need you to come in," the nurse said. "Your mother's asking for you." Maya's blood ran cold. "Is something wrong?" No, the nurse assured her quickly. "She's actually doing very well. She just says she has something important to tell you." At the hospital, they found Grace sitting up in bed, surrounded by papers and old photo albums. "Mama, what's all this?" Grace patted the bed beside her. "Come here, both of you. There's something you need to see." She opened one of the albums to a yellowed newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Local teen saves family from fire." "I don't understand," Maya said. "Look at the picture," Grace urged. The black and white photo showed a teenage boy helping a family out of a burning house. Even with the poor quality, Maya recognized Marcus's father. "Dad saved that family?" Marcus asked, his voice shaking. "He was a hero that day," Grace said softly. "But the publicity brought attention he didn't want. People started asking questions about his past, about the gambling debts he was running from. That's why he left town 2 weeks later." Marcus sat down heavily in the bedside chair. "He never told me. All these years I thought, I'm showing you this because you need to understand something." Grace took both their hands. "The past doesn't define us. What matters is who we choose to be now, in this moment." Maya squeezed her mother's hand. "Why are you telling us this today?" "Because I saw those nasty headlines, baby. And I saw the way you both tensed up when the nurse brought in the morning paper. You're letting fear of the past and what people might say steal your joy." Before either of them could respond, Marcus's phone buzzed. The board meeting was starting. "Go," Grace said. "But remember what I said, and Marcus, there's something else you should know about your father." She handed him an envelope. "He wrote this letter before he left. Asked me to give it to you when the time was right. I think that time is now." Marcus stared at the envelope, his hands trembling slightly. Maya put her arm around him. "Read it when you're ready," she said softly. "I'll be right here." He tucked the letter into his jacket pocket and kissed her gently. "I love you," he whispered, then froze, realizing what he'd said. Maya's heart soared. "I love you too." Grace wiped away happy tears as Marcus hurried out to his meeting. "Now that's what I've been waiting to hear. Mama," Maya blushed. "Oh, hush. I've known you two were in love since you were 12 years old. You just needed time to figure it out yourselves." Maya sat with her mother for the next few hours, going through old photos and sharing memories. But her mind kept drifting to Marcus, wondering if he was reading the letter, hoping the board meeting was going well. Finally, her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Meeting over. Big news. Coming to get you. Love you." Those last 2 words made her smile like a teenager. When Marcus arrived at the hospital, His face was flushed with excitement. "You'll never believe what happened." He explained that after he read his father's letter, which revealed that he'd been trying to protect his family from dangerous loan sharks, Marcus had gone to the board meeting with a new perspective on family, loyalty, and redemption. "I told them everything," he said, "about our childhood, about reconnecting, about falling in love all over again, and then I showed them something else." He pulled out a folder. "Remember that foundation you wanted to start? To help families with medical bills. I had my team working on it for weeks. The board just approved it unanimously. They want to make it a major part of Chen Enterprises' charitable giving." Maya stared at the papers, which outlined a multi-million-dollar healthcare foundation that would help thousands of families. "But that's not all," Marcus continued. "Richard showed up at the meeting with more accusations, more evidence of our arrangement. But before he could speak, Mrs. Chen, my grandmother's best friend and oldest board member, stood up." He grinned. "Apparently she's been following our story in the society pages. She said, and I quote, 'Any fool can see these two are madly in love, and if Richard can't see that, maybe he needs to have his eyes checked.'" Grace laughed from her hospital bed. "I always did like that woman." Marcus knelt beside Maya's chair. "The board didn't just reject Richard's claims, they voted to remove him from the company entirely. Said his obsession with discrediting us was harming the company's reputation." Maya felt tears of relief and joy rolling down her cheeks. "So it's over? All the threats, all the scandal?" "Almost." Marcus took her hands in his. "There's just one more thing I need to do." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I know we're already engaged, but that was an arrangement. This is real." Opening the box revealed not an elaborate diamond, but a simple silver ring with a small sapphire, exactly like the one Maya's father had given her mother. "How did you know?" she whispered. "You told me once, when we were kids. Said it was the most beautiful ring you'd ever seen, not because of the stone, but because of the love it represented." Grace was openly crying now as Marcus got down on one knee. "Maya Thompson, I've loved you since I was 12 years old. Will you marry me? Not for the company, not for any arrangement, just because I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Maya pulled him up and kissed him, pouring 15 years of love and longing into that one moment. "Is that a yes?" Marcus asked when they finally broke apart. "That's a what took you so long?" Maya laughed through her tears. Grace clapped her hands. "Now that's what I call a proper proposal. Though I have to say I'm a little disappointed you didn't do it in the botanical gardens like we planned." "Mama," Maya and Marcus said in unison, then looked at each other and burst out laughing. Some of the nurses had gathered at the door, wiping away tears at the romantic scene. One of them caught Maya's eye and mouthed, "Now that's true love." Looking at Marcus's shining eyes, feeling the perfect weight of her mother's ring style on her finger, Maya couldn't agree more. What had started as an arrangement had bloomed into something far more precious, a second chance at first love. The week before the wedding flew by in a whirlwind of activity. The botanical gardens were transformed with white roses and twinkling lights, just as Maya had dreamed. But the biggest celebration happened 3 days before the ceremony, when Grace was finally discharged from the hospital. "The doctors can't believe how well you've responded to the treatment," Maya said, helping her mother settle into the guest room of the penthouse. "Love is the best medicine," Grace replied with a knowing smile. "Speaking of which, where's that handsome fiancé of yours?" As if on cue, Marcus appeared in the doorway carrying a familiar-looking box. "Mrs. Thompson, I found something I think you might want to see." He placed the box on Grace's lap. Inside was her old wedding dress, carefully preserved. "How did you—" Grace's eyes filled with tears. "I had my team track it down at the consignment shop where you sold it," Marcus explained. "Maya once told me how much you regretted having to sell it to pay the bills." Grace reached out and touched the delicate lace. "Robert and I were so young when we got married. Everyone said it wouldn't last, that we were rushing into things. But when you know, you know." Maya sat on the edge of the bed, running her fingers over the dress she'd only seen in pictures. "Mama, would you be upset if I—" "Baby, I've been hoping you'd wear it." Grace squeezed her daughter's hand. "It needs a few alterations, but we have time." The next few days were filled with final preparations. Maya split her time between dress fittings and helping her mother regain her strength. Marcus threw himself into a special project he wouldn't tell Maya about, just saying it was a surprise for the wedding. The night before the ceremony, Maya couldn't sleep. She found herself wandering into the penthouse kitchen for a glass of water, only to find Marcus already there, reading an old letter by the light of his phone. "Your father's letter?" she asked softly. He nodded, wiping his eyes quickly. "He explains everything here. The gambling debts, the dangerous people after him, why he had to leave. He was trying to protect us." Maya sat beside him. "Have you thought about trying to find him?" "Actually," Marcus showed her his phone screen. "Richard's attack on us had one unexpected benefit. After the story hit the papers, a private investigator contacted me. He thinks he knows where my father is." Maya's heart skipped. "Where?" "Phoenix. He's been sober for 10 years, working as a counselor at a rehabilitation center." Marcus's voice shook slightly. "He's been following my career in the news. He wanted to reach out so many times, but he was ashamed." "Are you going to contact him?" Marcus took her hand. "I already did. He's coming to the wedding tomorrow." Maya wrapped her arms around him as he finally let his tears fall freely. They sat there in the quiet kitchen, holding each other until the sun began to rise over the city. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and beautiful. At the botanical gardens, everything was perfect. The flowers, the music, the hundreds of white chairs lined up along the path where Maya's father had once proposed to her mother. In a small room near the garden, Maya stood in her mother's restored wedding dress, looking at herself in the mirror. The alterations were perfect, making the vintage gown look timeless. "You look just like I did," Grace said from her chair, her eyes shining with tears. She was wearing a beautiful blue dress that Marcus had specially designed for her. But even happier, there was a knock at the door. "Maya, someone here wants to see you." She opened the door to find Marcus's father, James Chen, standing there nervously. He looked older than in the photos, his hair gray, but his eyes were clear and kind. "I'm sorry to interrupt," he said softly. I wanted to thank you." "Thank me for what?" "For loving my son, for helping him become the man I always hoped he'd be." James's voice cracked. "I saw the news stories about you two. About how you knew each other as children. You were there for him when I wasn't." Maya hugged the older man impulsively. "He's going to be so happy you're here. I don't deserve his forgiveness." "Love isn't about deserving," Grace spoke up from her chair. "It's about choosing each other every day, even when it's hard." The wedding music began to play outside. Maya's heart raced as she took her place at the garden entrance. The path ahead was lined with roses, and at the end stood Marcus, looking more handsome than ever in his tuxedo. But it was his face that took her breath away. The moment he saw her, his eyes filled with tears of joy, and his smile could have lit up the whole city. Grace walked beside her daughter down the aisle, slow but steady, her head held high. When they reached Marcus, he hugged Grace tightly before taking Maya's hands in his. The minister began the ceremony, but Maya barely heard the words. She was lost in Marcus's eyes, seeing their whole history there. 2 kids sharing lunch, teenagers dreaming of the future, adults finding their way back to each other. When it came time for the vows, Marcus surprised everyone by putting aside the papers in his hand. "Maya," he said, his voice carrying clearly across the garden, 15 years ago I left for college with half my heart staying behind. I tried to fill that empty space with success, with achievement, with everything I thought would make me whole. But nothing worked until that night at the gala when I saw you again and finally understood. You've had my heart all along." Tears rolled down Maya's cheeks as she spoke her own vows. "Marcus, you were my first friend, my first protector, my first love. Life took us apart, but love brought us back together. I promise to stand by you, to believe in you, to love you, not just for who you are, but for who we are together." As they exchanged rings, Maya saw James Chen in the front row, crying openly as he watched his son. She saw her mother beaming with pride and joy. She saw all the people who had been part of their journey, from old neighbors who who had watched them grow up to board members who had stood by them through the scandal. But mostly, she saw Marcus, her best friend, her partner, her love. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Marcus pulled her into a kiss that felt like coming home. The guests erupted in applause, and rose petals rained down around them. "Ready to face the world together?" Marcus whispered against her lips. Maya smiled. "Just like always. Us against the world." Above them, a pair of butterflies danced in the sunlight, their wings catching the golden glow of a perfect afternoon. It was as if the whole universe was celebrating this moment, this love story that had begun with two children sharing lunch and grown into something beautiful and unbreakable. 1 year later, Maya stood in the doorway of her mother's new garden, watching Grace teach Marcus how to properly prune roses. The morning sun painted everything in a warm glow, and the sound of their laughter filled the air. "No, dear," Grace was saying, taking the shears from her son-in-law's hands. "You're thinking too much like a businessman. Roses need a gentle touch." Marcus grinned. "I should stick to running companies and leave the gardening to you two." The past year had brought more joy than Maya could have imagined. Grace's cancer was in full remission, and she had moved into a beautiful house next door to Maya and Marcus, complete with the garden she'd always dreamed of having. The Thompson Chen Medical Foundation had already helped hundreds of families afford life-saving treatments. Maya ran it full-time now, using her experience as a social worker to make sure help reached those who needed it most. "Mrs. Chen," their neighbor called over the fence, "your story is in the magazine again." Maya picked up the copy of Love and Life magazine that had been tossed over. The cover showed a photo from their wedding day with the headline, "From Childhood Friends to Soulmates, the real love story behind New York's power couple." "They're still writing about us?" Marcus asked, coming to read over her shoulder. "People love a good love story," Grace said, carefully cutting a perfect red rose, "especially one that proves money isn't everything." Inside the house, Maya's phone rang. It was Richard. "Cousin," he said quietly when she answered. The word still felt strange coming from him. "I wanted you to hear it from me first. The rehabilitation program you recommended. It's working. 3 months sober now." After the wedding, Maya had surprised everyone by reaching out to Richard. She recognized the same pain in him that she'd seen in Marcus years ago, the need to prove himself, to be worthy of his family's legacy. "That's wonderful, Richard. Will you come to dinner next week? Your Uncle James will be there." There was a pause. "You really think he wants to see me, after everything I did?" "Family is family," Maya said firmly. "We all deserve second chances." After hanging up, she went back outside to find Marcus, and Grace had abandoned the gardening in favor of looking through old photo albums. "Look what your mother found," Marcus called, holding up a faded picture. It showed 2 kids sharing a sandwich on school steps, both grinning at the camera. Maya's heart melted. She remembered that day clearly. It was right after Marcus's father left, when he was too proud to tell anyone he didn't have lunch money. "You know," Grace said thoughtfully, "I took that picture because I saw something special in the way you two looked at each other. Even then." Marcus pulled Maya down to sit beside him on the garden bench. "I still look at her the same way." "You better," Grace teased, then gestured to Maya's slightly rounded belly. "Especially now that you're giving me a grandbaby." They hadn't announced the pregnancy publicly yet, wanting to keep this joy private for a little while longer. But Maya's hand instinctively went to her stomach, and Marcus's hand covered hers. "Speaking of the baby," he said, suddenly looking nervous, "I have something to show you both." He led them through the house to what had been his home office. The room had been completely transformed. The walls were painted a soft yellow, and a beautiful wooden crib stood in the center. "Marcus," Maya gasped, "when did you do this?" "I've been working on it for weeks, the crib. I made it myself." "Dad helped." His voice was thick with emotion. "It's made from wood from that old oak tree in our elementary school yard. They had to cut it down last month, but I thought our child should have a piece of where our story began." Maya threw her arms around him, crying happy tears. Grace watched them with a knowing smile. "You know," she said, "some people spend their whole lives looking for the kind of love you two have, but you found it in a school playground, sharing a sandwich. Later that evening, after Grace had gone home and the sun was setting, Maya and Marcus sat in their favorite spot on the balcony. The city stretched out before them, but they were in their own world. "Do you ever think about how different our lives would be if we hadn't reconnected at that gala?" Maya asked, leaning back against Marcus's chest. "I think we would have found our way back to each other somehow," he said, his hands resting protectively over their growing child. Some love stories are just meant to be. Maya thought about everything that had brought them to this moment: the childhood friendship, the years apart, the arrangement that turned into real love, the healing of old wounds, the building of new dreams. "You know what's funny?" she said. "When we made that arrangement, I thought I was just doing what I had to do to save my mother. I never imagined I was actually saving myself." Marcus kissed her temple softly. "We saved each other. We always have." Inside the house, their phones buzzed with messages and emails about foundation work, company business, and all the responsibilities that came with their life together. But out here, watching the stars appear over the city, where they had found each other again, none of that mattered. They were just Maya and Marcus, two kids from the wrong side of the tracks who had grown up to discover that love doesn't care about bank accounts or social status. Love cares about the heart that shares its sandwich, the hand that helps you up when you fall, the soul that recognizes its other half across a crowded room after 15 years apart. "I love you," Marcus whispered, the words as natural as breathing. "I love you too," Maya replied, thinking how those simple words contained multitudes, their past, their present, their future, all wrapped up in 3 syllables. In her next-door garden, Grace looked out her window at the young couple on their balcony. She smiled, thinking of another love story that had started simply and grown into something beautiful. "You'd be so proud of her, Robert," she said softly to her late husband's picture on the windowsill. Our girl found her way home. A warm breeze rustled the roses, carrying the scent of new blooms and endless possibilities. In 9 months, a new chapter would begin, but the story, their story, would go on, proving that sometimes the greatest love stories don't start with grand gestures or fairy tale meetings. Sometimes they start with a shared sandwich, take a 15-year detour, and end exactly where they were always meant to be, together.